Warning: the following episode of the Neoliberal podcast contains video images which you may find graphic. The video images are images taken from various clips and videos depicting and exploring the homeless crisis in Philadelphia. Viewer discretion is advised.
Virtually lawless streets, record unemployment, and a completely wide open drug market. Why did it happen here? Why is it so concentrated in this area? And when did all this start? Wow. A war zone.
If you hear sirens in the background, it's constant. They're just constantly going.
It's not easy or safe, but it wasn't always like this. Back in the day, there was an economic boom in Philly, with the textile and carpet manufacturing, just to name a couple. And people came to fill the need for workers in those factories. And it was a real melting pot of working class citizens. But a downturn in manufacturing happened here in the 60s and 70s, and those employment needs soon dried up. In fact, by 1975, about 75% of those industrial jobs and businesses were gone, moved away, or simply went out of business. And then came the poverty, the drugs, the crime. The 1970s, it was speed and cocaine, sold by city gangs and supplied by the mafia. The 1980s was the crack epidemic. And the 1990s came the heroin craze. A high-purity, snortable heroin flowed into this area and took over.
The interesting and powerful conversation I had with the Deputy Chief at Turning Point for Children in Philadelphia, and he's also a former managing director for the city of Philadelphia, Mr. David Fair, a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, who also runs several non-profits in Philadelphia on homeless initiative non-profits, and he also operates several mentorship programs. Was an activist before he started working in social services. He's very involved in policy in the city of Philadelphia, and he has also worked with the mayor before in the past on several initiatives. He was part of the fight for equity and justice during the civil rights movement, during the fight for HIV/AIDS. He's going to be in a documentary on HBO, Eyes on the Prize, the remake of the PBS series Eyes on the Prize. But this particular documentary series looks at the fight for justice in terms of medical justice, HIV/AIDS, and how African American, the discrimination in the 1980s and 90s. But we had him on the show. We did it, and we interviewed him about that before, and we had several breaking news stories with Mr. David Fair talking about the fact that his agency, Turning Point, will be transferring out or ending the COA program, the Community Umbrella Agency program, the agencies or the program that is responsible for providing case management or human services case management on behalf of the Department of Human Services. There is some kind of issue, and he talks about that at the beginning of the show. What we did, we broke this podcast up into three different pieces. There's part 1, part 2, and part 3, because it's about an hour and a half, and each part deals with a different particular matter. The first part he talks about the issue of, he talks about case management, the struggles at Turning Point for Children, and what Turning Points have to go through and had to endure as a result, and why they are ending their core services, which is breaking news, which is breaking news, and it's interesting that we are providing that commentary to you today. But that part 1 looks at them ending their core services and what's happening with child, youth, and family services, the issue of the insurance being too high, so on and so forth. We get into that a bit. Then in part 2, we talk about the issue of homelessness and the research that we did, which addressed that homelessness was actually increasing. But one particular issue, some information that was quite interesting as I sat with Mr. Fair talking about the issue of homelessness and human services. We talk about the issue of shelters, and one of the things that was striking, and one point that seemed to have come out based on the conversation we had, was one of the things that we gleaned was that shelters are temporary. Shelters are never fixed to the issue of homelessness. And there are a lot of homeless shelters in Philadelphia and various cities across the world, in the U.S. And some of the shelters operate within the winter time. By summer, they are closed. Okay, so the way in which we conduct homelessness studies, especially how the city had done it, was to literally count the individuals who report to be homeless. Okay, and so in some periods homelessness probably will be high, and in some periods it's going to be low. In the summer, homelessness is going to be higher than in the winter probably. But so far what we know now is that homelessness is increasing, and there was a study that suggests that it was decreasing, but then when we checked we realized that no, it's actually on the rise. Homelessness is on the rise, poverty is on the rise. Child poverty has doubled since 2019 or 2020. Child poverty has doubled. Child and youth homelessness, especially those between 17 and 18 or 17 and 24, and those aging out of foster care programs. And Turning Point have a foster care program outside of their CYS program, or outside of their core program is their foster care program. And so there are those in the foster care system between 17 to 24. Once you get to 17, you start to age out, and sometimes there is no homeless shelters and programs for them. He talks about that. And so while we might think about, the city providing shelters is not a fix. Shelters is a temporary fix to homelessness. Homelessness is more permanency. There's more permanency when you think about homelessness. When you think about having a home or persons living in a home, that speaks to the issue of permanency. Living in shelters, it's temporary. It's not permanent. Okay. So one of the things, we talked about that, the issue of homelessness, and the fact that shelters does not provide a lasting answer or fix to the issue of homelessness. And we talk about the lack of resources. Of course, he said recently in a LinkedIn comment, referencing a report by the Public Integrity Commission on homelessness, a homelessness study that was done in Philadelphia, which shows that homelessness is increasing. And part of the issue we have with homelessness is that the city is not properly identifying people who are homeless. That's also another issue with homelessness, the issue of identification. If we can't properly identify people who are homeless, then we can't provide the kind of services that they need to bring them out of homelessness. So the city has so there's a study that referenced that. And so we talked about that at length, and we talked about other issues in case management. We also talk about core case managers getting an increase, the fact that we're still seeing where agencies are offering case managers 45,000, 50,000, when recently there was a report that core case managers' salaries have increased from 53,000 up to about 60,000. But he talked about that and why there are permutations. That's what's coming up next on the Neoliberal Round podcast, brought to you by the Neoliberal Corporation, serving the world today to solve tomorrow's challenges by making popular what was the monopoly. And I hope to probably. This show I want to have an opportunity to speak with some people on the streets about homelessness. We want to find at least one or two people who are homeless and to have a quick conversation with them and include them in the show. But that's what's coming up on the next end, at the other side. This is the Neoliberal, the Neoliberal Round podcast. I'm Renaldo McKenzie. Hi, David. I can't hear you. 1 minute. Well, I'm doing very well, David. I'm doing very well. I recently got some bad news about my mom. She was in the hospital, admitted in the hospital recently.
Oh, wow.
And we're given an option. So it's not the medical field is on the medical side with loved ones, not so good. I've lost a loved one. who died at a resort. My mom is not well. She's in the hospital. I mean, I think they released her yesterday, but she's battling a very rare form of cancer called thymoma, and it's very rare. And so we're dealing with that. My mom is, probably about to be 80 years old, and we
She
love
in the
her.
States?
She's in the U.S. Yes,
Yeah.
but she normally spends the summer in the U.S. Sorry, summer in the U.S., winter in Jamaica.
Okay.
Yes,
That
yes,
makes
yes.
sense. That makes
But
sense.
medical care, I mean, her medical care, her medical care is very expensive, wherever you are in the
I
world,
got it.
and it's been very stressing for us. It's been stressing for me. I lost a dad, and
Imagine. Oh,
I don't want to lose a mom right now.
that's
Yes. How are you doing? I mean, I know you also have some issue dealing within your own family. How is everything?
yeah. Pretty ill. There's not
Yes,
much that can be done, so we're
yes,
trying to keep a positive outlook.
yes, yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
and Turning Points has been going through a lot of changes since we no longer. I don't know if I think we might have talked about this.
Yes, and I'm happy that because I wanted welcome to another powerful episode of the Neoliberal podcast. My podcast producer, co-producer, and podcast manager has just stepped in for a small studio episode of the Neoliberal podcast. Welcome, Dante. Welcome to the studio audience. Welcome to people or wherever you are in the world. I'm Renaldo McKenzie, and this is another powerful episode of the Neoliberal podcast. This is citizenship journalism, according to Elon Musk. We have with us, and actually, it's not according to Elon Musk, according to Renaldo, because I've been promoting citizenship journalism for about 2-3 years now, and it seems to be catching on. But it's good to be part of this movement, the podcast movement. We need support us. But we're going to talk about a very important issue. And with me is Mr. David Fear, who has been is no stranger to the Neoliberal podcast. He's been with us. We're happy to have him. He's going to be tough. When it comes down to social work and child, youth, and family services, human services, welfare, but not only that, because he will tell you before he started working in social work. Before he was an activist working with to advance equal pay and so on in the city of Philadelphia. In fact, he will be coming on HBO for documentary series Eyes on the Prize. They interviewed him talking about his work in Philadelphia in the 1980s as it relates to mitigating, responding to the HIV/AIDS crisis. So it's great to have you on the show again. Thank you so much, David.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, man. Listen, we want to talk about homelessness because I saw your post recently about homelessness. Because I saw your post about homelessness. I think some time ago you reposted an article that says, "Where are the homeless children?" And that's the title of the article published in publicintegrity.org. Where are the homeless children? This struggling city isn't finding them. Probably you could touch on the article a little bit. I read a little bit about it, and you responded by saying this is yet another disgrace regarding our city's lack of response to the crisis of homelessness. But just so when I saw that post, and by the way, welcome to the Neoliberal podcast. By the way, I'm trying to get a lot into one little break. But welcome to the show, David. David is the deputy chief at Turning Point, former managing director at the city of Philadelphia. So, and I'm a graduate of University of Penn, my alma mater. Welcome to the show. We're going to talk about that, your response to the lack of, in terms of the article that was written recently in Public Integrity, talking about the lack of response to homelessness. And so welcome to the show.
It's an honor, as always, to be here.
Yes. What should we touch on first? Maybe we should touch on what's going on in Turning Points, because I know recently you were on the show and we talked about the fact that they are getting rid of their community umbrella agencies. And that, and you're one of the largest community umbrella agency Turning Point. You're one of so what has been the response? How has it been going? What's been going on at Turning Points?
Well, the past few months, we've been transitioning the services to about 3,000 children to other agencies who are picking up these services. The problem we ran into was that we had 4 of these community umbrella agency contracts. More than half of the children involved formally with the child welfare system were being serviced by Turning Points. And as with any large program, when you have every day you have 3,000 kids that you're trying to protect and take care of, things go wrong sometimes. And when they go wrong, sometimes they go seriously wrong. Rarely does it have anything to do with Turning Points. It often has to do with somebody in the family hurts somebody else in the family, or hurts a child, or DHS makes a decision to return a child to a family that's really not ready to keep that child safe, and something happens. The technicalities are that the city is immune from lawsuits. You can't get anything if you sue the city. You can't get any money or relief if you sue the city. Unfortunately, even though we operate, the community umbrella agencies operate under the cover of the license of the Department of Human Services, we don't have the same legal protection. So over the last 10 years, we've been doing core work. We've had about 13 lawsuits, which I don't think is so bad when you consider we've serviced almost 13,000 children during that period. But we got 13 lawsuits. All of them were serious.
Oh, wow.
I would say in 2/3 of those cases, Turning Points had a reasonably good argument that we were the wrong people to sue, because we didn't.
Right.
Our job is not taking care of the child. If somebody doesn't take care of the child, who hurts the child in the home, we can't prevent that from happening. We're not in the home 24/7, 365 days a year. But nonetheless, we get sued for that because the trial lawyers in the city recognize that our insurance companies would prefer, if somebody sues, they prefer to arrange some kind of settlement agreement so that the case doesn't go to court. Because if the case goes to court, the fact that it's a child who got hurt means that a jury is likely to give a much bigger settlement than you can negotiate before you go to court. And so it becomes almost a scam. It's like the trial lawyers look for these cases, and I'm convinced that there are people at DHS who report their confidential information to these trial lawyers, because there's no way they could have known some of these things without somebody from DHS sharing it with them. When the trial lawyer gets the information, they file a lawsuit.
Yes.
Happens is our insurance company then gets involved. They tell us they want to settle the case because they don't want to have to pay an even bigger payout if we went to court. So it becomes a game where somebody shares confidential information with a trial lawyer. There's a couple of trial lawyers who specialize in this. They sue knowing that the insurance company is going to pay them a settlement. They negotiate a settlement, and then they go to the next case and do the same thing all over again. And what happened over the 10 years we've been operating, even though we've only had the 13 cases, the insurance companies became very nervous about giving us insurance in the first place, because they knew that whatever premium we paid, they would have to pay out more than that.
Right.
Because of the game that was being played by the trial lawyers. And so the bottom line is that in 2023, the year we're in,
Yes.
Insurance we got for this year, the premium, just the premium, cost $6.4 million.
Oh,
To pay
wow.
the premium on the insurance. The payouts from the insurance were larger than $6.4 million. It was close to 8 or
Okay.
9 million. So the insurance company wound up losing $2 or $3 million a year because of these lawsuits. And so, and
So, by the way, I saw in terms of over the 10-year period, the total lawsuits, these what, 15 lawsuits, is it 13 or 15,
13
13?
lawsuits.
There's about $8.9 million, and over that's what they have costed the agency.
Well, so it doesn't actually cost, well, yes, it costed
Yes, yes.
$6.4 million this year to purchase the insurance. That's the premium.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Up until this year, DHS has been willing to pay basically for that $6.4 million. They've been willing to pay for the insurance. This year, they told us that it was getting to be too high and they weren't going to cover the insurance. And we don't have the money to cover the insurance. So we live only on the basis of our DHS contracts. So if DHS doesn't cover the insurance, there's no way to cover the insurance. And the bottom line is that meant we couldn't continue to do community umbrella agency services because we couldn't afford to get new insurance when our insurance expires in December. So that's why we had to give up the COAs.
As of now, because I know we did a show some time ago, I think it was in July, announcing that I think at Turning Point will be transferring their COAs to other agencies. So
Yes.
has that started to happen as yet? Or
Yes, 3 of them have been fully transferred.
Okay.
There's one that gets transferred as of November 1st.
Okay.
Will be, on November 1st, we will no longer have any COA services being offered by Turning Points. Meanwhile, we have a number of other high-quality programs that don't have these kinds of problems. We have the largest foster care program in the city with almost 900 children who are in our care through the foster care program. We have a program that helps kids in foster care find family members they might have lost touch with, so they can have the support of their families while they're in foster care and potentially even go to live with those what we call kinship relationships, so that they don't have to stay in the foster care system. We have a variety of services targeting older youth who transition out of the foster care system. That is a big problem. The city provides no support for a child once they leave the foster care system.
And I guess this is it's a very good place to transition into. I mean, I still wanted to ask you about the COAs. What's going to happen to all of the workers? So are they going to be working for Turning Point or are they going to
the workers move over with the contracts. So nobody's losing their jobs in this process. They're just working for a different agency now.
And have you guys identified the agency as the transition a smooth process? Has there been any pushback? Has there been any kind of support from the city saying, hey, hold your brakes, I mean, draw the brakes a bit. Let's see what we can do. Has there been any kind of way to resolve this particular issue?
It's been relatively smooth transition. There was one COA that DHS couldn't find a provider for. So that's the one that's still with Turning Points and is going to transition on November 1st. They finally did find another agency that was willing to take this on. I mean, it's a very scary thing because the other COAs, they haven't yet had the problem we had with insurance because they're a lot smaller than us. But as now, at least 2 of our COAs are now being run by people who already had COAs. So they have double the size of their COAs, and they're going to start running into the same problems we ran into because they have too many cases. Something's going to go wrong. Lawsuits are going to happen. Insurance companies are going to say, I'm not going to pay for that anymore. And so the whole system is at risk in the longer term because it's the model is incorrect. The model is unfair, really. We operate under the license of the Department of Human Services, so we should be protected in the same way the Department of Human Services is. That doesn't mean that we believe the kids who get hurt should get screwed, but we do believe that it's not the unless it's our responsibility, unless we did something to endanger the child, we shouldn't be the ones that have to pay those settlements. Whoever was guilty of the act should pay. So, for example, we had a case where a child, an older youth, about 18 years old, who had a lot of problems. He was very violent. DHS had a hard time placing him. They came to us and said that we had to find a placement for this child. And we said, we won't find a placement in a foster home because he's too violent. He needs to be in a facility where he can be monitored and taken care of that way. DHS ordered us to place the kid into a foster home. We had absolutely nothing to do with that decision. He killed the foster parent 3 days later.
Okay.
And it turns out he had actually killed another child in foster care a few days after that. I mean, that's how violent this young man was. And we got sued. Even though we had nothing to do with the decision to put the child in the foster home, even though there was nothing we could do to protect that foster parent. Because we don't, we're not in the home. We can't, and, we didn't get any extra money for security or anything like that. And it was an out of control young person, seriously mentally ill, a young person that everybody knew was violent. But DHS told us we had to place the kid in that home anyway. And we got sued, not DHS.
Yes.
Not the child who committed the murder, but we were the only people out there that could be sued.
And that is interesting. Why is it that you guys were the only one who could be sued? And I remember you mentioned this case. This case happened about a couple years ago?
Yes.
Okay. What happened? What about? Can you give us a little bit back, because that's quite an interesting story.
Who else? The people who should have been sued?
Yeah.
The Department of Human Services, because they're the ones who made the decision to put a violent child into the home of what turned out to be an elderly foster parent.
Okay.
It was a bad decision. The decision was made by DHS. It was not made by us. We were ordered to do it. And so DHS is accountable. The problem is you can't sue DHS because they have immunity. So we're next in line. And so we get sued even though we had nothing to do with the situation. And the insurance company, in that particular case, we had a really good case if it went to court.
Yes.
They're suing the wrong person. But the insurance company wouldn't go to court. This was a child who had killed a foster parent. They're convinced that a jury is going to give millions and millions of dollars to the family of this woman who sacrificed her life for this kid, and they don't want to pay that, so they work out an arrangement with the lawyers. In this case, the lawyers of the family of the foster parent, and they get a settlement that's at least cheaper than it would be if it was a jury verdict. And we're basically the innocent victims in the process. But we can't. But if we can't pay for the premiums, we can't do the work. Because at least with insurance, we have some kind of protection. DHS wanted us to keep operating these programs without the protection of insurance because they knew we couldn't pay for the insurance, and they decided they couldn't pay for the insurance either because it was getting to be too much. So now and everybody knew that we were having these problems because we had 4 cores. We were way too big. The chance of a problem happening when you have more than half of the children in foster care